Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely. In celebration of Pi Day, we are having a very Raspberry Pi heavy episode and we have a lot to get through, so let's waste no time and get going. We're starting this week's show with a Raspberry Pi powered cosmic ray detector, and this is from the Marco Reps YouTube channel, which is a real gem. If you're not familiar, he very infrequently puts out videos, but they are incredibly detailed videos covering electronics, microcontrollers, 3D printing, DIY CNC machines. He pretty much has made it all with his signature dry German sense of humor, and this video is no different. So this video, as well as being a build video, explains the cosmic ray phenomenon fairly well in ways that even someone like me would understand, and it also explains the Cosmic Pi project, which is a very cool thing. I'm going to try and explain it and hopefully not butcher it, but the idea is that to use a telescope or to set up equipment that could accurately track cosmic rays is quite an expensive and large project. What they're trying to do is give an open source design that anyone can build, and that information from all of these single pixels is gathered together and then stored in a central unit. What they're essentially doing is crowdsourcing one massive cosmic ray telescope. Now, again, I may have butchered that, and if I have, I suggest you go and watch this video because Marco explains it absolutely perfectly, as he does most things. So as well as the explanation, there is a lot of juicy footage of the PCB being put together, and it is a very beautiful PCB as well. Now, as I mentioned, Cosmic Pi, as the name suggests, is a Raspberry Pi project. It actually runs on a Raspberry Pi Zero, and that is for logging everything, but the board itself runs on an STM32 chip. But yes, the project itself is something that I find wonderful. The idea that anyone could build their own cosmic ray detector for relatively cheap, and by relatively cheap, I'm still talking several $100s here. You still have to make a workable device. But these nodes, compared to the many, many thousands that official equipment has costed in the past, is relatively cheap. And the idea of being one of many, many people making up one huge array of people who are monitoring cosmic rays to try and learn more about them is something I find wonderful. It reminds me of many years ago when our family computer, whenever it was not being used, was receiving data from, I believe, SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and being processed on our home computer, and we were, part of a crowdsourcing thing back then. This is much of the same idea, and I do think it is a wonderful project. As I said, project aside, Marco Reps is another one of my absolutely favorite YouTube channels, and I couldn't be happier that I've had an excuse to feature him on the show. Up next, a Raspberry Pi podcasting setup tutorial from Mo Long of Electromaker. Yes, you might not realize this, but behind the scenes, if you have been talking in the YouTube comments or on Twitter, you've probably been talking to Mo. When I comment, I tend to say, "Hi, Ian here," so people know it's me, but Mo is one of the people that works on this show with me, and frankly takes care of all of the social media things that I don't really understand. This week, I thought it would be a fantastic thing for Pi Day to go over one of his old projects, because I think it's a use for a Raspberry Pi that I haven't seen all that often. So the tutorial on the Electromaker website takes you through everything you need to turn a Raspberry Pi 4 into a small podcasting studio. And if you think about it, it's actually the perfect fit, because the Raspberry Pi is very powerful these days, but it's also very small, and it's still capable of being run off battery power. But because it is a fully fledged computer, you can just record raw audio, or you can do some kind of digital signal processing. You could produce, cut, and publish the podcast all on the same device. It seems to me like a very good fit. So as well as taking you through the rationale for doing it, it gives you quite a lot of options as to how you can do it. Of course, if you already have a USB microphone, then you're pretty much ready to go. You can just plug it in and use some of the software that's suggested later in the article. If, like me, you have an XLR microphone, you are going to need a step in between. However, I have a little Zoom audio recorder that I use as an external interface. You could use an external sound card. You could even use an external USB mixer and plug as many microphones into it as you like. Pre-mix it before it goes into the Raspberry Pi. There's a lot of options here. But one of the things I really like about this article is it also gives you some software options. Now, Audacity is my go-to for almost everything simple, but an interesting choice here is Reaper, because Reaper is a fully fledged DAW. I've mostly used Ableton Live over the years, but I have produced some music using Reaper, and it is fantastic. You can do absolutely everything with it that you can with more expensive digital audio workstations. It just might be a little bit harder to get your head around. But if you wanted to add music or effects to anything, this is a perfect choice. Anyhow, the article is not only a great rundown of getting started with podcasting on the Raspberry Pi, but it's also a nice rundown on getting started with audio in general in terms of getting audio in and out of the Pi, and it's a great read, so I will link it in the comment section of this week's show. Liz City DIY is the YouTube channel of Liz Clark, a maker and educator and seemingly wonderful person. I've been a big fan of her work for years. Very early on when I was messing around with Arduinos and audio, she was one of the people that was messing around with Arduinos and audio. She was making guitar pedals with them, and yeah, long story short, she has this fantastic MIDI fighter. It's like a old school buttons, but a MIDI controller. There's lots of variations of them around, but hers is quite an old project, and it has now been updated in collaboration with Adafruit. Yes, the original design by Blitz City DIY has been upgraded to use the Raspberry Pi Pico, and it has a number of nice features. Now, as always, I suggest you go and watch the video and read through the tutorial because it is a very, very well put together tutorial. There is, of course, links where you can get all of the parts needed to make it as well. But in short, this is another 16-button MIDI controller, but yes, with those lovely light-up MIDI fighter LEDs. I love the fact they call them MIDI fighter because it's like the buttons on the Street Fighter machine. This is an obvious thing, but MIDI fighter has such a nice ring to it. And it uses a Raspberry Pi Pico, along with a couple of other really cool little things. Now, regardless of which browser I tried, for some reason this GIF just won't load for me today. It was absolutely fine yesterday. But you'll have to trust me when I say that this is a 5-axis joystick. That is, you can move in each direction and press it in, and it is being used in conjunction with the OLED screen to move from pad to pad and change MIDI values on the fly. Now, that is absolutely awesome. I also really like the sort of lunchbox aesthetic it has going because the handle, as well as being very useful, doubles as a stand. And that slight angle up, I know from being a pad player for many years, does make a lot of difference. Now, as mentioned, there is a video that goes alongside the article which takes you through the build process, it takes you through the software, and it'll give you a very good idea as to whether you are interested in building this thing or not. Now, I think it goes without saying that I am very much interested in building this, but there's a level beyond this, because I know I show my enthusiasm for MIDI-based microcontroller projects a lot, but I really am, specifically this kind of layout, very, very interested in it. And that is because for a number of years, alongside playing the piano and the guitar, this was one of my primary instruments. In fact, this thing is on its last legs. The poor thing is really, really knackered from years and years of playing all over the place, including music festivals, and it's had pints of beer spilt on it and all that kind of stuff. And it is high time that I got a new controller going. And I've been sort of umming and ahhing about doing it for a while, and seeing this thing come out has made me realize that yes, this is the one that I think I want to build, and so I will be, and I'm sure I'll be coming back and showing it off on the show at some point in the future. Anyway, the thing itself is absolutely lovely, and as mentioned, this is an Adafruit video, so it's very easy to follow and very clear, but I would suggest also heading to the link to the upgrade plans video that Liz put out as well. Both of these will be in the description of the video, and again, much like I said about Marco Rep's channel, if you've only just discovered Blitz City DIY, I'm sorry for all of the YouTube that you're going to want to watch now. Up next, a project from the latest Magpie magazine about how researchers are keeping track of bees using a Raspberry Pi 4. Now, the core of the project is really quite inventive. It's taking bees from a research hive for now and putting small scraps of reflective fabric on them, the same kind of fabric you get in reflective jackets. And then using a Raspberry Pi along with a very brief camera flash in order to get those bits of fabric to show up on an image, and then using image processing to determine whether there are bees in the frame or not. So the article goes into way more detail than I am going to here, but look, you can see the nice little reflective scrap there. But I just think this is such a wonderful project. A cheap single board computer alongside a machine learning algorithm is helping take away some of the man hours of research into bees. And anything that can help the bees right now is a pretty good thing. So I'll be leaving a link to this in the description of the video. Up next, 3D printers, one of the most useful things that you can have in your home lab. However, did you know it can also be a musical instrument? Yes, this is a project that turns MIDI into G-code that can be played on a 3D printer. This is the brainchild of Alex Yu, and there is a link in the description of the video to an online place where you can do this. You can upload your MIDI and it will spit out M300 G-code. Now, I should point out that this is a little bit different to some of those videos you may have seen of stepper motors playing music. M300 is what's used in Marlin firmware to tell the LCD or the little control board here to use the onboard piezo speaker. So you're actually playing it through a little speaker, you're not playing it with the stepper motors, although there are various ways you can do that as well. And I've seen stepper motors play music before, but I'd never seen this before, which I thought was sort of interesting, and I thought it was worth putting in this week's show. Up next, Piper Make, which is a project from Shri Bose. This is a video of her speaking on the Make YouTube channel about the project, and it is a visual programming language for the Raspberry Pi Pico. I'm amazed that something like this has come out so quickly after the Pico's release, and I'm very, very happy about it. I don't think I need to describe exactly how this works. It's very similar to things that we've covered in the past. If you've used any visual programming languages with kids before, for say working with Arduino or as we talked about earlier, the microbit, this is going to be very similar. The talk about it is really interesting. It takes you through the idea behind making it and what they're hoping to achieve with Piper Make. And as you can see here, this is a very familiar thing indeed. Now, I'll be linking this introductory video, which is fantastic, but I also wanted to show you that this is actually already online. It is already there at make.piper.com, although there is a link to it in the description of the video I'll be linking. And it is a very slick and very well put together interface, as well as having just a general open area where you can create your own projects. There's a few circuit challenges here, and it takes you through, as you say, everything you need to know. It tells you all about the Raspberry Pi Pico, all about the pins in easy to understand terms, and how you can get going with the onboard LED, how to attach it to your computer, and then how to set up the block code. So I'm going to click on chip. I'm going to get start. What else is on chip? Turn pin. Let's see, turn pin. Okay, once you've built the code above, click next. And then you get the idea. I'm not going to go through the entire thing here, but yes, this is just yet another example of really nice block-based programming. This seems like a fantastic project. And another thing that seems quite compelling to me is the Makers Club. The Makers Club is a sort of subscription service, and I think that's a very good thing. In a time when there are so many free services out there that need to make money somehow, this seems like a really good way to do it. And there are 3 different ways you can do it. So you can get a starter kit, which will give you a Raspberry Pi Pico, and that's sort of the first month. You get a Pi Pico, you get a few bits and pieces, but you can either monthly keep paying $20 a month, or you can pay yearly. You can pay $200 a year, and you get a free piece of technology every month, along with new lessons. And so every month you'll get something new through the post, and you'll learn a little bit more about the Pi Pico, and it all ties into the online IDE, as it were, here. And I really like this idea. As someone with a young child who will be growing into this at some point, I really like the idea of something coming through the post with their name on it, them being able to open it. And I will probably already know how all of the things that come through work from doing it with other microcontrollers, but being able to learn with them and follow the lessons set up by Piper is exactly the kind of thing that I find very compelling and interesting. And the introductory video itself is fantastic too. Shri seems like a very passionate person, everything about this that I've seen so far in the short time that I've played with it seems very slick and very nice. And again, I seem to say this a lot, I know, but if you are thinking of some kind of gift to get someone younger who's maybe getting into this, this would be a really lovely thing that you could get them. This isn't a one-off gift. This is a subscription that will last an entire year, along with a fresh new platform, which presumably is going to be improved and added on all the time. Mystery box competition. Oh yes! The mystery box competition is very simple. The good people at Mouser Electronics have given us a box of mystery things to give away. I do my best to not be spoiled either, so that when I reach my hand in and pull something out, it's always a surprise. And today, we have a plastic box, which I'm going to look inside. I think my favourite part of doing this competition is being able to have a little nosy at the prizes before I give them away, actually. And this is... Oh, this is a microbit. Oh, I love these little things. I love these. Okay, quick cut to get camera number 2 set up so that I can show you this thing up close. I'm pretty sure that everyone watching this show will be familiar with the microbit, but just on the off chance that you aren't, this is a little microcontroller maker board designed by the BBC along with... I don't know if it was designed with Nordic. I know it has a Nordic NRF 5 something. What is it? The NRF 51822 microcontroller in it. Just trying to keep this in focus and talk at the same time. It's not particularly easy. But as you can see, there's a nice little 5x5 array of LEDs on the front, a couple of buttons, a really nice thick edge connector here that you can use for connecting to those 3 GPIOs you can see, along with a 3-volt and ground port. And if I spin it around to the back, you can see there is a compass, an accelerometer, and of course the pins I just mentioned. There is the Nordic NRF 51822 chip. Bear in mind this is the microbit version 1, so the version 2, which came out in October last year, that also has a little speaker and a microphone on the back here. This one does not. And then this other chip that you see over here is just I can't remember exactly off the top of my head which one this is. I think this is an NXP chip, but basically that's just a little bridge chip from the USB to the main processor. I think it also takes care of power regulation. Now, I did notice as well that this little packet, it comes with the microbit itself, which is just here. It comes with a little USB to micro USB cable for programming it, but it also comes with a little battery bank, which had, I happen to notice, some batteries in it. So let's see if this microbit has any things already set up. So I'll get this in sight just so you can see it, and then I will plug the battery bank in, and... or maybe I should switch cameras first as well, shouldn't I? Yeah, let's do that. Oh, look, there it goes. Very cool. Hello, Dot. Arrows. Fantastic. I love it. So our prize this week is a microbit, and I couldn't be happier because it's one of my favorite microcontrollers. Yes, it's perfect for children who are learning the very, very basics, but at its core, it's an NRF 5 series Nordic chip. You know, it's an ARM Cortex chip. You can just get the NRF SDK and program it the hard way if you wanted, or you could sit down with a young family member and teach them the basics of coding using MakeCode, Scratch, or Python. It does everything. I love it. Anyway, that is enough waffling from Ian. We have a prize, now we need to choose a prize winner. And our winner this week is How to Make World, whose comment says, "Nicey!" And I could not agree more. So we'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this prize out to you. And just a quick reminder, everyone that comments on our videos gets entered into the mystery box competition, but you don't have to comment just to enter the competition. You could also just let us know what you're doing with your week. We're always very, very happy to hear what everyone's up to and what you're enjoying about the show. Now would be a very nice time to remind you that we do the YouTube thing, but we don't push it very hard. But you know, the whole like, subscribe and share it with people, that would be very appreciated. But anyway, let's get on with the rest of the show. It is that part of the show where we look at things on funding websites, and we are starting with a wonderful Raspberry Pi kit on Kickstarter. LumiCube is a kit for the Raspberry Pi that's based on these LEDs, as you can see, but it does a lot more than that as well. Essentially, it is a nice little kit which has several sensors built in, LEDs on the outside, and a screen. There's various versions you can get, but it also has, as you can see, its own development environment. They've got a browser-based development environment to make it very easy. In fact, you don't even need to be able to code at all to use this. They've got a bunch of so-called apps that you can load onto it. You could get this for someone who isn't remotely interested in coding as just a very cool and interactive bedside lamp or table or speaker type thing, and they could use that exactly as it is, or just dip their toes in and start to learn a little bit of how they can sort of hack it and make it work. And of course, it's a Raspberry Pi, so if you want to get one explicitly to hack it and put your own firmware and programming on it, then yeah, you can do that as well. It seems like a really compelling idea. Now, this Kickstarter video is excellent, actually. It takes you through pretty much everything that makes this project exciting. And as you can see, they perhaps unsurprisingly, with a project as slick as this, already smashed their goal. If you are interested in getting a hold of one of these yourself, the lowest pledge amount is £81. There's only limited amounts of those. In fact, there's only 3 left when I'm looking at it right now. But you should realize that there are different versions of this. The base cube comes with the LEDs, a speaker, and a microphone. None of them come with a Raspberry Pi. You have to have your own Raspberry Pi. And if you want things like the extra sensors and the screen, you're going to be paying different rates in different versions. So the base version is £81. If you want the screen upgrade, which comes with something else as well, that's an extra £25, and there's an extra £25 again. But that said, I feel like for something that is so hackable and that you could use for so very long, something that is an all-in-one complete Raspberry Pi kit, basically, the Raspberry Pi fits inside it nicely, I think it's kind of cool. I think this is something that may cost a little bit more, but you're going to get a lot of use out of it. And when I say more expensive, I just mean more expensive compared to standard Raspberry Pi kits. You're getting a lot more than that. I mean, they've got their own browser-based environment here that you can code in, and everything that they've done, as they've said, they've given you the tools in order to hack it. They have their own RESTful API that you can use to interact with the cube and get it to talk to other things. You could quite easily shake this thing and have it turn your lights on and off. Yeah, this is a really, really well thought out project. This is sort of one of those ones that combines everything in a way that, if it does what it says it's going to do, is going to be really quite special. So yes, LumiCube. At least on the surface, this looks like an almost endless kit of possibilities, combined with something that is aesthetically quite pleasing. And I will be leaving a link to it in the description so you can take a look at it yourself. Moving over to Crowd Supply with MyMicroPLC, which is a slightly cleverer than your average relay board. And that is because it has a microcontroller all of its own and a micro bus slot, as you can see here. Now, the microcontroller on here is a PIC microcontroller. If I remember correctly, it's a PIC 17. Let's have a little look. PIC 18FK42. I remembered that horribly. Yes, as you can see, this is one of the many ways it could be used. It has all of the relays here. These are all isolated inputs, and this is the microbus expansion for Ethernet, and so you can connect it to a Raspberry Pi via Ethernet. Of course, there's nothing to stop you from just programming the microcontroller by itself. The PIC 18FK42 is one that I've never used myself, but as far as I understand it, it is not all that dissimilar to the power that you get out of other AT mega chips that you would find on Arduinos and things like that. Although it's a bit more professional, it has a little bit more in terms of onboard DACs and ADCs and all of that kind of stuff. So as you can see, this is a coming soon, so you can add your email address if you'd like more information on it. I will try to come back to it to see how much it costs when it does go live, because there's a number of things about it I do find quite compelling. The fact that you can communicate with it as a standalone thing via serial, the fact that you can of course program the microcontroller however you would like to, the fact that it has a real-time clock on it, so you can just put a battery in there and it will keep time for you, or you can, as the picture lower shows, put some kind of device on here like Ethernet or whatever to attach to a Raspberry Pi. There's a lot of options here. And also it's a PIC microcontroller, which I feel like you just don't see as often in this kind of device anymore. So yeah, this is a fun one. We'll be coming back to it. But for now, if you're interested, head to the link in the description of this video and you will find the MicroPLC. While talking about the Raspberry Pi and of course the new Raspberry Pi Pico, it's easy to neglect the Raspberry Pi compute modules, which the Foundation have been putting out for several years now. And these are essentially very nice little system-on modules, not dissimilar to the kind you will find in the NVIDIA Jetson Nano and the NVIDIA Xavier or Xavier, however you want to pronounce it. And it is a small, fully featured Raspberry Pi board, but that you have to fit into a baseboard of your own, of which there are now several. But one thing that hadn't showed up so far is a multiple Ethernet baseboard that would turn it into a networking device. But suddenly, much like buses, several have turned up at once. Now, all three of these are on the always fantastic CNX software, and I suggest you go there to read through the full details of them. I'm going to really quickly whip through them right now. But there's a number of things about this that are really quite interesting. So the first one is from SeedStudios, and here it is. As you can see, you have your dual Ethernet ports here, along with dual USB 3 ports. There's micro USB here as well. And the system on modules it supports are the Compute Module 4 and the Compute Module 4 Lite. So there's a variety of options there, both for what compute module you use in terms of price, because remember, the compute modules come in a whole variety. There's a chart as to what different kinds of compute modules you can get in terms of Compute Module 4, although I believe it does have to be a Compute Module 4 or Lite because of the way they attach to the baseboard. Anyway, the full details of this can be found in the article, and it looks pretty cool. There's no reason why you couldn't use other boards to make some kind of home networking solution. You could even use a Raspberry Pi Zero, but then you'd have to roll your own Ethernet using SPI or something. This has it already built in. Yeah, this is really cool, especially considering it costs only $45 plus shipping. Now, there are a couple of things I've glossed over here, and sure, there are other options for software routers, but I just thought this was definitely worth looking at, considering that the Raspberry Pi compute module is essentially just a fully functional little computer on a module. It's kind of amazing. But this isn't the only one. This down here is a very similar thing, as you can see. This is from MCUZone. It's the Raspberry Pi CM4 4G I/O board, and as the name suggests, this is very similar, but with 4G connectivity. It comes with a 4G modem. Now, it is much more expensive and it lacks a couple of things that the other one has. So, for example, these ports are only USB 2, so it's not going to be quite as fast in terms of saving things to disk if you wanted to do that. But yeah, the absolute freedom that having a 4G modem gives you is quite big, and of course there's also this quite nice little aluminium case. But as mentioned, the price is much higher. There's a lot more details here. As always, I'm going to skip over them because you can read them on the fantastic CNX software. We'll leave a link to it in the description, and there's a nice chart for it here. And the price of this, which you can get from AliExpress, starts at $109. This is a lot more, but of course that is because they're selling it with a Huawei 4G modem as well. But that is not all, because on Pi Day, Onlogic announced the One Tough Pi, which is a little mini PC box designed for the Compute Module 4. Now, there's a bunch of things here that are nice. The M2 SATA SSD slot is very nice, but again, coming back to the main thing here, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, just like the other ones. All 3 of these are going to be able to be used as software routers or various things that require more than one Ethernet port. And there's a number of other things again here that are probably going to be quite nice, but this is just an announcement. This one isn't available yet. I presume they announced it because it's nice to have something like this that is Raspberry Pi relevant to announce on Pi Day. But I really quite like the aesthetics of this. Obviously, this is just the one picture and it's not particularly high resolution, but yes, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where this one goes. And when it comes out and there's a price for it, we'll be coming back to it. So I will leave a link to both of these articles in the description of this video. And just out of interest, if you are someone who owns a Raspberry Pi compute module, what do you use it for? I've thought many times over the years about getting started with one, maybe even trying to build my own baseboard, sending off and getting something sent to me, but never really got round to it. If you are a user of it, be it as a hobby or professionally, let us know in the comments, let us know what you're doing with it. They are quite compelling little beasts. Finally, this week, we return to the YouTube channel of Mitsela. Now, I've made it very clear several times that this is one of my favorite YouTube channels. He is a very inventive person. He mixes microcontrollers with music. I mean, what you know me, you know what I love. But this is just a blast from the past talking about Rockbox, which was a piece of firmware that you could put on a huge variety of MP3 players that would absolutely improve them in almost every way. It would change the way songs played back. In some cases, it would improve battery life. It even had a Game Boy emulator on it. I think it was a Game Boy emulator. He goes into detail in this video. I remember a friend of mine having a Zen something MP3 player, I believe it was called, and they managed to get Rockbox working on it, and me thinking it was possibly one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. Anyway. The video itself is just a step into nostalgia and his story as to how he got Rockbox, looked into Rockbox, and in many ways trying to work out how on earth you could take something like an MP3 player and rewrite its firmware, turned him into the maker that he is today. It is a wonderful and quite touching video with fantastic animation done by Mitsela. So I will leave a link to this in the description. If you haven't seen anything on his channel before, enjoy it, and I'm very sorry because you're going to want to watch every single thing that he has done. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, there will be a fresh new Electromaker show next week, but between now and then, if you see any cool projects you think we'd like, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and if you're working on something cool, consider documenting it on the Electromaker website. I do cover projects from that site as well as everywhere else, of course, and there's a quite cool little community growing on there, and we're very, very happy about that. But for now, I hope you have a very fun, creative, and safe week, and I'll see you in the next one.